Emma. I am the community liaison here at Mental Health Partners.
And I am Paige. I am the outreach worker here at Mental Health Partners.
And today we are here. This is the first of our two-part series to talk about holiday stress, ways that this stress kind of manifests in our bodies, how to recognize these stress cues, and then also some productive tips on how to deal with these stressful moments.
Yeah, so during the holidays, emotions can be heightened. You may feel overcome with loneliness, annoyed with relatives, or even just like lose patience with a loved one. You may be worrying about money, finances, traveling. You could be overindulging and underindulging in food and alcohol, and creating these really bad habits for yourself. So let's talk about a way that we can recognize and cope with these emotions. But first, it's good to understand what our body and minds do when we're under the stress. Emma, how do you feel when you are stressed?
When I'm stressed, I feel really tense. I also feel kind of exhausted. I feel like I have a hard time being productive, which feels kind of counterintuitive. I definitely notice myself having more negative emotions, being a little more antisocial, and just generally not having a good attitude about the things around me.
Mm-hmm. And that's totally normal. Like those things happen when we're stressed. And the reason they happen is because with your body, the nervous system creates these releasing stress hormones that like adrenaline and cortisol, and they provoke the body for emergency stance and like to take action. So as your body is moving to the state, your heart starts to pound faster, your muscles start to get tighter, your blood pressure heightens, and your breathing is faster. So those are some of like the feelings you may feel when you're stressed in your body. Our mind can be affected too, and this can affect our mood. We can be more anxious, depressed. It really just heightens and increases those mental health problems that we may have. And this can cause the brain to stay in survival mode. And when our brain is in survival mode, that means that the amygdala is being used. And we aren't having enough time to focus on memory and thinking, so we forget to do things, and our memory just gets worse. As you continue to feel stress, you lose sociability and you avoid interactions with others because you don't find joy in that.
So some of the things you mentioned kind of go into 4 different categories that we can talk about how these stress cues actually play out in those 4 categories a little more specifically now that we have some background on why it happens. So the 4 main areas that stress can exhibit itself in ourselves is physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral. I think it's really important to talk about what these stress cues actually look like so that we are able to recognize them when they happen to ourselves and then go from there using some of those stress reduction techniques. So let's kind of talk about what those look like and go from there.
Yeah, so the first one, emotional, this would be like feeling burnt out, having increased irritability and moodiness, and feelings of anxiety and unexplainable outbursts that you may have.
And then physically, you might feel stress headaches. You might feel physical symptoms of anxiety, including rapid heart rate and nausea. You might also feel an upset stomach and generally feel like you're more susceptible to getting sick more often as a result of feeling run down.
Mm-hmm. And cognitively, you may see yourself worrying more, having racing thoughts, and not being able to stop those thoughts from continuing, and experiencing brain fog, feeling more forgetful and having a really hard time to concentrate and focus on things. A lot of times we can have these thoughts in our head like, I can't wait for this to be over, or I don't want to do this by myself or for myself right now.
And then lastly, behaviorally, when you're feeling stressed, you might notice yourself lashing out more or feeling a tendency to isolate yourself. You might also notice yourself indulging in certain behaviors associated with eating or drinking, either overindulging or underindulging, kind of just indulging in those more drastic behaviors. Also not practicing good sleep habits. So whether that is not getting enough sleep as a result of being stressed or oversleeping as a result of being stressed. And then lastly, engaging in nervous habits like nail biting or pacing. So now that we've talked about what these cues look like, a really good way to recognize these cues is through the practice of mindfulness. So that's kind of by being aware of your body, your mind. And a good way to do this in practice is by completing a body scan. So sort of just sitting for a moment, closing your eyes and going over each of these 4 categories. So physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral, and kind of just sensing yourself and acknowledging if you're feeling any of these symptoms that we talked about. In general, people really crave certainty and control. And so when we're feeling stressed, anxious, and just the general pressure of the holidays, it can make us feel like we're out of control. We will talk next week about some ways that we can maintain a sense of control over ourselves and the things around us through some coping skills and stress reduction techniques. We'll talk about some proactive ways to plan for the stress that we might be feeling and how to deal with that. And then we'll talk about some reactive in the moment ways to deal with this stress that we might feel as it comes up.
Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you watch your second video. Leave a comment below and we can address your ideas, comments, whatever you may want to say.
Also, please feel free to check out any of the other YouTube videos we have on our channel, as well as our different social media accounts that will be linked in the description of this video, including our Facebook page, Instagram, etc. And yeah, please tune in next week for part 2 of this video, where we will talk about proactive and reactive tips to stress during the holidays. Bye.
Thank you.